Android seems to be no longer synonymous with Samsung handset, and the tough choices we face when choosing a phone this holiday season got complicated even further by Google's own Nexus 5 handset, arguably the best value you can snatch in RoboLand. This is Daniel from PhoneArena with a video comparison between the Google Nexus 5 and the Samsung Galaxy S4. Google's phone puts the makings of a flagship, such as a 5-inch 1080p display, quad-core Snapdragon 800 processor, and an optically stabilized camera in a $350 chassis, and tops it off with some exclusive features from the latest Android 4.4 KitKat. The Galaxy S4 counters with unorthodox 1080p OLED display, expandable memory, and user-replaceable battery. Are they relatively unknown for the typical user Nexus 5 and its unique KitKat features, able to win holiday shoppers against the most popular Android flagship Galaxy S4 and its instant Samsung brand recognition? Well, let's find out. Glossy or soft touch plastic, rounded or more clear-cut corners. These will be the main choices you will be facing when choosing between the Galaxy S4 or Nexus 5 chassis respectively, as the phones weigh exactly the same 130 grams and have very similar dimensions in length and width. The Galaxy S4 is a tad slimmer at 7.9mm against the 8.6mm Nexus 5, but it's not the thickness that makes Google's phone appear cruder, rather the whole angular industrial design of it. Still, both handsets sit very well in the hand, and the svelte looks of the Galaxy S4 don't translate into better ergonomics compared to the Nexus 5, as far as handling is concerned. This soft-touch, almost rubbery chassis of the LG-made Nexus feels a bit more premium to the touch than the glossy polycarbonate of the S4 though, as the subjective impression here boils down to your personal preferences. Moreover, the soft-touch coating of the black Nexus 5 quickly gets spattered with rather visible fingerprints and smudges. Samsung's flagship line has offered removable back covers, expandable storage, and user-replaceable batteries from day one, and the S4 doesn't stray from that tradition, whereas the unibody and Nexus 5 is rather limited in that respect. Its battery is not user-replaceable, and it lacks microSD memory card slot. The mobiles utilize micro SIM card slots, with the Nexus 5 providing a right side tray for it and a very tiny pin instrument in the box. The side keys on both handsets are very easy to feel and press without looking, with good tactile feedback to them. Samsung offers its signature physical home key too, whereas the Nexus 5 relies on navigational buttons that are on screen and can be hidden away when the whole display is needed with the new immersive mode. Since both phones have identical screen diagonals and close dimensions, the presence of on-screen buttons on the Nexus 5 doesn't seem to offer any particular advantage, so that department is again a matter of personal preferences. Both screens are 5-inch 1080 by 1920 pixels Full HD panels, so they should be pretty similar, right? Well, not really, as the display technologies used are rather different. Samsung differentiates its flagship handsets with the homebrew Super AMOLED tech that brings about very deep black levels, yet somewhat cold and oversaturated colors. You can choose different screen modes in the display settings, but these basic premises still visible, and there are sometimes weird glitches like scrolling blur and purple-hued status bar, facing the early adopters of the world's first Super AMOLED Full HD mobile display. The Nexus 5 uses an IPS LCD screen made by LG, which sports more washed-out blacks compared to the Galaxy S4, but truer color representation. Still, its colors are slightly yellowish and undersaturated compared to reference screen. Its viewing angles seem a tad worse than those of the OLED display, especially when observing the phone at an angle from its corners. Outdoors, both devices have pretty similar visibility, despite the Nexus 5's LCD screen is brighter than Samsung's panel. Google's phone seems to sport high reflection ratio, especially true with the annoying mirror reflections, where you have direct light shining on the screen, like the sun for instance. The Galaxy S4 has pretty good anti-reflective coating, and its much higher contrast levels contribute to visibility on par with the Nexus 5 outdoors, despite the lower peak brightness. Blessed with the newest Android 4.4 KitKat out of the box, the Nexus 5 will have bragging rights before the Android 4.3 laden Galaxy S4 for a few months, but after that it's fair game. Samsung puts its TouchWiz Nature UX interface on top of the Android looks, so if you want stock experience, the Nexus 5 should still be your bet. Samsung's interface supports some additional functions you might find useful, such as eye tracking via the front camera, which keeps the screen on as long as you're looking at it, as well as video playback pulse when you glance away. In addition, it offers things like AirView, which lets you preview emails, messages, or even Flipboard news dials by hovering your finger over them, and Group Play, which can daisy chain a few Galaxy S4 speakers for improvised surround sound listening or collaborative gameplay. Thanks to the built-in thermometer and hygrometer, Samsung's phone can also record the ambient temperature and humidity, utilized best in the exclusive S-Health fitness and well-being app that warns when the environment is getting unbearable around you. In addition, it can count your steps and movements throughout the day and do some tricks with calorie and fitness regimen based on your lifestyle. The Nexus 5 strikes back with a step counter too, but this one has a pedometer sensor directly built into the phone, not relying solely on the run-of-the-mill gyro and accelerometer that every smartphone has. Android KitKat also introduces new interface features like calling the Google Now butler with a left swipe, or the new immersive mode, which if supported by the app, allows to hide the on-screen buttons and status bar, which can then be called back with a simple gesture. Furthermore, there are some functions that are unique for KitKat on the Nexus 5, such as wallpapers, the ability to start voice search directly from the home screen by saying OK Google, and low-power audio playback that lasts for up to 60 hours on the phone thanks to the embedded audio tunneling in the chipset. The S4 music playback can last about the same though, so not really an advantage. Overall, if you prefer stock Android rather than manufacturer customizations, no matter how good they are, the Nexus 5 is currently your best bet. When the Galaxy S4 receives its KitKat update, things would be on a more even keel, yet some features that are unique to the Nexus 5 hardware won't be making it to Samsung's handset. Graced with a quad-core Snapdragon 800 clocked at 2.3 GHz and stock Android build, the Google Nexus 5 should run faster than the Galaxy S4 with its quad-core Snapdragon 600. This is, however, not the case, neither during handling nor if you are a benchmark geek, as the quadrant results, for instance, are higher from the S4. In reality, the interface and app performance of Samsung's handset is perfectly fine, without any noticeable lag or stutter compared to the Nexus. Both phones offer 2 GB of RAM, so feel free to multitask at your heart's desire, but when it comes to expandable memory, the S4 has the upper hand. Granted, the phone comes in the same 16 GB or 32 GB versions as the Nexus 5, but offers a microSD card slot under that removable back cover for further storage expansion. No bad word can be said about browsing on these speedy handsets. Nexus 5 uses Chrome as the default browser, so you can kiss any Adobe Flash need that arises goodbye with a stock app, while Samsung's browser lets you sideload it. Chrome is getting faster and better with each new edition, but the Speed King is still Samsung's default browser. Its interface seems a bit clunky though compared to the minimalistic one of Chrome, and it's easy tap switching. The phones are loaded with connectivity options such as LTE, HSP Plus radios depending on the region and carrier, Wi-Fi AC, Bluetooth 4.0, assisted GPS, DNA, NFC, you name it. Android 4.4 KitKat introduces native support for infrared blasters, but the Nexus 5 doesn't have one, while the Galaxy S4 can be used as an IR remote with its dedicated app that lets you control TVs, home stereos, air conditioners, and the like from your phone. As for wired connectivity, the microUSB port on both phones has HDMI out. However, on the Galaxy S4 you must use MHO adapter cable, while on the Nexus 5 you must use a slim port one. The galleries on both devices are pretty standard, with grid-like thumbnail previews of your photos, folder categorization, and editing options. Samsung lets you split the screen in two with a folder structure on the left and the contents on the right, which speeds up gallery navigation. Android KitKat introduces some richer editing options to the stock interface, but Samsung's overlay has had a similar abundance of editing features and color effects from day one. Nexus 5 uses the Play Music Cloud service front for your tunes, which doesn't differ from what you used to see on any Android with the Google Apps suite on it. You've got song categorization, a few built-in equalizer presets, and that's about it. Samsung's music player is no eye candy either, but it does the job fine, categorizing your tunes in albums, artists, playlists, and even genres, while also introducing an abundance of equalizer modes and sound modes you can choose from. The Nexus 5 loudspeaker is on the iffy side with flat and not particularly strong sound. Not that the Galaxy S4 speaker is much better in that respect, but it's at least stronger, 71 decibels versus 66 for the Nexus in our test. Moreover, the S4 comes with an excellent set of earbuds that are a step above the usual mediocrity that manufacturers pack with their handsets, while the Nexus 5 has no earbuds in the box at all. Video playback is superior on the Galaxy S4, not only thanks to the deep blacks and saturated colors of the AMOLED display that make the footage really pop, but also because its player supports most major codecs out of the box, including MKV, DVX and XVAD, and the phone lasts much longer during video playback than the Nexus. Google's phone, on the other hand, doesn't have DVX licenses, so if you want to play videos in that format, you'd have to hit the Play Store. It does add closed captioning and subtitle support though, thanks to Android KitKat, and you can set system-wide captions in the language and font of your choice with Preview. The Nexus 5 sports an 8-megapixel camera with 2.4 aperture, while the Galaxy S4 counters with a 13-megapixel unit with the same aperture but a larger sensor. Google's phone, however, sports optical image stabilization tech, which hangs the sensor on a tiny suspension mechanism designed to compensate for your hand's movements, thus diminishing shaky videos or blur. Samsung offers an abundance of shooting and scene modes, as well as color effects in its interface, ranging from panorama through HDR to macro modes, which can be set through a quick transparent interface. The Android KitKat camera interface is more devoid of shooting options and hasn't changed much from the previous version. Nexus 5, however, got a nice exclusive HDR Plus mode, which not only combines burst shots taken with different exposure, but applies some proprietary sharpening algorithms too, for a very good overall effect. Good to the point that you'd want to have HDR Plus always on, in the case of the Nexus 5, as otherwise photos with the handset can show overexposed bright areas very often. The Galaxy S4 sports rather natural color representation, whereas the Nexus 5 tends to lean on the warm side, leaving slightly yellowish cast impression. Detail is a tad less in the Nexus 5 photos compared to what the Galaxy S4 is able to capture, with about the difference we'd expect to see between an 8-megapixel and 13-megapixel camera. In darker scenarios, however, the Nexus 5 has the upper hand with better lit, blur-free frames. The stabilization allows it to soak in more light as the exposure times stay longer than those on the Galaxy S4 without causing blur. The end result is better lit images with less noise. The LED flashes on the handsets do a decent job illuminating the scene evenly from about 5 feet distance without casting awkward shadows or some weird reflections. The panoramas that the two phones capture are hugely different. The ones from the S4 are excellent with huge resolution and top-notch detail and colors. The ones from the Nexus 5 are exactly the opposite, with disappointingly low resolution, detail and lacking colors. The front-facing camera on the Nexus 5 is 1.3 megapixel, while the Galaxy S4 has a slightly higher 2 megapixel resolution. Nexus 5's front cam exposes your selfies better against strong light, like a window for instance, but detail is scarce and things get hairy when the light dims down, giving the Galaxy S4 an advantage for indoor selfies or video chat sessions. Video capture is pretty stellar on both handsets with 1080p resolution, fluid 30 frames per second and clean audio recording. The footage just looks better from the Nexus 5 though, and not only because it is much steadier thanks to the image stabilization tech in the camera, but also since its refocusing and exposure compensation are thus faster while panning around. Contrast is also set a tad higher on the Nexus 5 capture by default, which adds to the visual appeal of its video footage. The Samsung Galaxy S4 is an excellent phone. Compared to the Nexus, it also offers a microSD slot, longer video playback, a tad more detailed photos and IR blaster for universal remote control. However, you can add 2 Benjamins to the $350 price tag of the Nexus 5 if you want the Galaxy S4 off contract. Apart from those, the Nexus 5 offers very similar experience to the Galaxy S4 in all areas and outshines it in several, such as low light photos and steadier videos. Also, it will be a while before the Galaxy S4 gets the latest Android 4.4 KitKat, at least officially. If you're buying the Nexus 5 from the Play Store, that is, since carrier pricing differences with subsidies aren't as stark as the full retail price gap between the two handsets, amounting to about $50 or euros. On Sprint, for instance, the Nexus 5 can be had for $150 if you aren't transferring your number from another carrier, while the Galaxy S4 costs $200 Full retail price is listed by Sprint as $450 for the Nexus and $600 for the S4. Moving over to Europe, France carriers, for instance, sell the Nexus 5 for €130, while the S4 will run you $180 on the same contract. One thing is for certain, if you want stock Android and the fastest updates to the latest iteration of Google's mobile operating system, the Nexus 5 won't make you break the piggy bank for this to happen, provided that you can grab it off the Play Store and you'll still flaunt flagship specs to boot. This was a video comparison between the Google Nexus 5 and the Samsung Galaxy S4 from PhoneArena. For more information about this and other handsets, you can visit us at PhoneArena.com. Thanks for watching.